Prime Minister Narendra Modi has asked all citizens to observe a Janata curfew, which is effectively voluntary isolation for about 14 hours on March 22nd, which is Sunday. In an address to the nation on March 19th, he announced a couple of things. Among other things, he also announced the setting up of an economic task force to come out with measures in consultation with various stakeholders to deal with the fallout on the economy because of COVID-19. The economic task force is headed by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. The biggest problem, the scariest part of what has happened in the economy because of the spread of COVID-19 across the world, and in India is no exception, is that policymakers do not know, policymakers do not have a guidebook because they have not dealt with, and nobody in the world has actually dealt with this kind of a situation. How do you, for instance, deal with a situation when the entire economy has to be locked down, for instance? If people are not allowed to go to shops, if people are not allowed to shop, if shops have to shut down, if restaurants have to shut down, if people are not out on the roads, or transport business is getting affected, if hotels and airlines, people are not flying and moving out from one city to another city, if people are not checking into hotels, it is affecting everybody. And please remember, India has a large informal sector which operates on daily transactions. So there are people out on the roads, there are people who are street vendors, there are people who are riding e-rickshaws, there are people who are earning their daily keep by selling goods and hawking their services on a daily basis. If all of them have to go out of business for an uncertain period of time, how do you deal with the economy? It has a direct impact on the way the economy functions, because people will stop spending, people's income will collapse, and there are wider implications across the broader economy. The economic task force that Finance Minister is heading and is going to hold holding its first meeting on Friday, which is March the 20th, is expected to come out with a series of measures in 2 to 3 days. That's what we understand. But let's see what the government can do. We have seen the state of Uttar Pradesh actually set up a committee to look into the possibility of making direct cash transfers to daily wage earners. Daily wage earners, please remember, basically earn their money on a daily basis by working at construction sites or various other places where economic activity takes place, including, say, for instance, in factories. Now, if daily wage earners have to go out of job because there is a kind of a semi-lockdown, or their economic activity has been restricted, how do they how do they earn their keep? Because it is also for them also it's a question of keeping the kitchen fires burning. They do not have enough savings, and clearly they are looking at an uncertain future. So the UP government has formed a committee so that people, this class of people who actually are the most vulnerable, because economically most vulnerable because of the fallout of COVID-19 across the economy, the government can actually handhold them and give some kind of a direct cash transfer. This is something which we have seen. The Hong Kong government has actually announced, and the US government has also announced and is going to implement. Well, if the UP government has taken a lead on this, it remains to be seen what other state governments will do. This is one of the possibilities that the central government probably could look at. The economic task force headed by the finance minister could possibly look at some kind of a direct cash transfer for the most vulnerable sections of the society who has seen their incomes actually dramatically fall because of the fallout of COVID-19 and restrictions on economic activity across a broad spectrum of industries and sectors. The only solution that governments across the world can now think of is extreme isolation, sustained isolation of people, of what is being called social distancing. And social distancing means economic activity gets seriously affected. So say, for instance, what happens, how will a real estate company which has construction going on now going to fulfill its projects and also keep on paying its employees, etc. So one of the ways that the government probably could look at is to announce some kind of a moratorium. It could also allow real estate companies to invoke what is called a force majeure clause. In simplified terms, it means that something which is external, which is and has arrived because of an unforeseen set of circumstances, they should be allowed to hold on to their payment of loans and should be allowed to defer the repayment of loans. So that is going to help the cash balances a bit. Probably we could look at abatement of property tax for about a certain period of time, say for about 6 months or so, for real estate companies. We could also look at moratorium for loan repayment of micro, small and medium enterprises, because they don't have deeper pockets, as I said, and also they don't have enough borrowing power. We know that the Reserve Bank of India is the Monetary Policy Committee that advises the Reserve Bank of India on interest rate related decisions, could be looking at a sharp cut in interest rates when the next Monetary Policy Committee meets in the first week of April. That's still about 2 weeks away. That is a possibility that most analysts are talking about. Interest rate cuts may not end up raising demand, but what it does, it has other consequences for businesses positively, in the sense that it helps bring down their loan repayment liabilities, their interest service requirements and payments come down, and that helps maintaining a certain amount of balance, which otherwise, because they are getting out of business, would get seriously affected. There is talk of a stimulus, and what kind of a fiscal headroom that the government has to announce some kind of a fiscal stimulus remains to be seen. We did speak to certain officials within the finance ministry, and stimulus, the government says that it has certain kind of a fiscal headroom to announce some stimulus, but whether this stimulus is going to come in the form of tax cuts or not remains to be seen. There is also a concept of a helicopter drop of money, where for central banks in the central bank in the country actually prints currency notes, and as the metaphor itself, as the descriptor itself says, it's like giving money, taking wads of currency notes in a helicopter and giving it to people's hands. So it is, instead of, that's only a metaphor, but a helicopter drop of money in the theoretical sense and in the policy sense could effectively mean that the government is actually directly transferring cash to hands of people to help them remain solvent. These are the things that the task force headed by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is actually going to look at. And it's not just that, it's not just one or couple of, it's not affected only one or a couple of sectors, it's affected the entire economy, from manufacturing to services. And so this is something that the government and policymakers are now actually brainstorming, and how to help all these sectors tide over the crisis, which nobody knows when it's going to end.